My name is Jane, and for years I felt completely lost in life. Every day felt like walking through a thick fog with no clear destination. I watched other people chase their dreams, build their careers, and smile with genuine excitement about tomorrow, while I felt empty inside. But life has a strange way of guiding us, even when we don't see the path ahead. Through moments of pain, confusion, and quiet reflection, I discovered something I never thought I'd find: my true purpose. This is my story of how being lost wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something meaningful. And maybe, just maybe, it can help you find your own light too. There were days when I would wake up in the morning and already feel tired, as if I had run a marathon in my sleep. The sky outside my window looked the same every day, and so did my life. I used to wonder why I even bothered getting out of bed. My name is Jane, and for a long time, I lived each day on autopilot, doing what was expected, not what I truly wanted. I smiled at people, answered emails, and did my work. But deep inside, I felt nothing. It was like my heart was beating only because it had to, not because it wanted to. At night, when the world got quiet, I would lie in bed and feel the emptiness more strongly than ever. I would think about my life, where I had been, where I was going, and no answers came to me. I didn't know what made me happy anymore. I didn't even know what happiness really meant. It felt like I was living someone else's life, following a path that had been laid out for me without asking what I truly wanted. Sometimes I would scroll through social media and see people traveling the world, starting businesses, writing books, and doing things they loved. They had a spark in their eyes, a fire that kept them going. And there I was, sitting alone in my room, wondering why I couldn't feel the same. I started to ask myself if maybe there was something wrong with me. Why couldn't I find something to be passionate about? Why did everything feel so heavy and pointless? I remember one evening I sat in my room with the lights off. The only light came from my phone screen as I stared blankly at it. I felt like crying, but no tears came. Instead, there was a dull ache in my chest, like a stone pressing down on my heart. I whispered to myself, "What am I doing with my life?" And in that moment, it really hit me that I didn't know the answer. It's strange, because from the outside, my life seemed okay. I had a job, friends I could talk to, and a family who cared. But inside, I felt lost. I couldn't understand why life felt so empty when I had things that were supposed to make me happy. I thought about my childhood dreams: becoming a writer, exploring new places, helping people. But over the years, those dreams had faded. They were replaced by routine, by the need to pay bills, by fear of failure. Many nights I would close my eyes and try to remember when I last felt truly alive. It had been so long that I couldn't even recall. I realized I had spent years trying to please everyone else, my family, my friends, my boss, without asking myself what I wanted. I had followed a path that seemed safe, hoping that someday happiness would catch up with me. But it never did. The emptiness didn't come all at once. It grew slowly, like a shadow creeping across the floor as the sun sets. At first, I ignored it. I told myself it was normal to feel tired or unmotivated sometimes. But over time, the shadow grew larger until it covered everything, and I couldn't pretend anymore. I remember once, after a long day at work, I sat on a bench in the park near my apartment. People around me were talking, laughing, and enjoying the evening air. I watched them and felt like I was on the outside looking in. It was as if there was a glass wall between me and the rest of the world. They were living and I was just existing. One day, I tried to open up to a friend. I told her, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I feel empty all the time. She looked at me with concern and said, maybe you're just stressed. You need a vacation. But I knew it wasn't just stress. It was deeper than that. I was lost, truly lost, and I didn't know how to find my way back. The emptiness made everything feel heavy. Even small tasks felt like climbing a mountain. I would sit at my desk at work, staring at the screen, unable to focus. My mind kept wandering to the same question: is this all there is? And when the answer seemed to be yes, I felt my heart sink a little more each day. Some nights, I would try to distract myself by watching movies or reading books. For a few hours, I could escape into someone else's story, forget my own pain. But when the credits rolled or the last page turned, the emptiness was still there, waiting for me. The worst part was not knowing why I felt this way. I didn't have a tragic past. I hadn't lost everything. And yet, I felt like I had nothing. It made me feel guilty, too, like I had no right to be sad when others had real problems. But the truth is, emptiness doesn't always need a reason. Sometimes it just happens when we stop listening to our hearts. In quiet moments, I started to ask myself deeper questions. When did I stop dreaming? When did I stop believing in myself? When did I start living only for others? At first, the answers were blurry, but slowly I realized it had been years since I had done something just because it made me happy. Everything had become about being responsible, practical, or safe. I remember how, as a child, I used to write stories late into the night, my imagination running wild. I used to paint, even if the drawings weren't perfect. I used to dance in my room to songs I loved. But somewhere along the way, I had locked away those parts of myself. I told myself they were childish, that I had to grow up. And in doing so, I had shut out the things that made me feel alive. It took many lonely nights and countless moments of silent reflection to realize that the emptiness wasn't because life had no meaning. It was because I wasn't living my life according to my own heart. I had been trying to fit into someone else's idea of success and happiness. I had been running so fast that I forgot to ask myself where I truly wanted to go. This realization didn't immediately make everything better. I still felt lost. But now, there was a small spark inside me, a quiet voice whispering that maybe, just maybe, I could find a way out. Maybe the emptiness was a sign, not a punishment, a sign that I needed to stop, look within, and remember who I really was. And that small spark became the beginning of my awakening. It was the first step in understanding that being lost isn't always the end. Sometimes it's where we start to ask the most important questions. And those questions can lead us back to ourselves, back to the dreams we once had, and forward into a life that feels real and meaningful. I didn't know it then, but this emptiness was the very thing that would push me to search for something deeper, something true. And in that search, I would begin to find my purpose, a purpose that wasn't about what the world wanted from me, but what my own heart had been quietly waiting for me to discover all along. After those long nights of emptiness and endless questions, something unexpected happened that slowly began to change everything for me. It didn't happen in a grand way. There was no sudden lightning bolts or magical moment when I woke up and everything was clear. Instead, it was a series of small, almost ordinary moments that gently pointed me toward a new path. Looking back now, I realize that sometimes the smallest things can create the biggest turning points in our lives. One evening, after another tiring day at work, I decided to stop by a bookstore on my way home. I didn't have a plan to buy anything. It was just a way to avoid going back to my empty apartment so quickly. As I walked between the shelves, I ran my fingers across the spines of books, reading titles without really paying attention. And then, almost by accident, my eyes landed on a small paperback book tucked between two larger ones. Its title was simple: Start Where You Are. For reasons I still can't fully explain, I picked it up. Maybe it was the title, maybe it was the quiet desperation I felt inside, but something told me to open it. The first page I read had a sentence that stopped me. You don't have to see the whole path. You just have to take the first step. My heart beat a little faster. It felt like someone had written those words just for me. That night, instead of watching TV until I fell asleep, I read the book. It wasn't filled with complicated advice or promises of instant happiness. Instead, it gently reminded me that feeling lost doesn't mean you're hopeless. It just means you're human. The book spoke about being kind to yourself, about exploring what makes your heart feel alive, even in small ways. Reading those words didn't erase the emptiness, but it made it feel less permanent. It made me believe, for the first time in years, that maybe I could change my life. Not all at once, but little by little. Around the same time, something else happened. At work, there was a meeting I didn't want to attend. I almost skipped it, but a colleague convinced me to join. During that meeting, we were asked to share something personal, a hobby, a story, anything outside of work. When it was my turn, I hesitated, but then, almost shyly, I mentioned how I used to love writing stories when I was younger. To my surprise, people were interested. One of them, a woman named Claire, came to me afterward and said, "You should start writing again. You talk about it like it still matters to you." Her words stayed with me for days. They echoed in my mind whenever I tried to ignore them. You should start writing again. I hadn't written in years. The thought scared me. What if I wasn't good anymore? What if it made no difference? But one weekend, when the emptiness felt too heavy, I opened my laptop and began to write. The words came slowly at first, but then, as if my heart had been waiting for this chance, they began to flow. I wrote a short story about a girl who felt invisible in a crowded city, trying to find her voice. When I finished, I didn't judge it. For the first time, I wasn't writing to impress anyone. I was writing because it made me feel something other than emptiness. Even if just for a while, I felt alive. That small act, writing again, became a tiny light in the darkness. I started to spend my evenings not scrolling through my phone, but writing short stories, thoughts, or just messy pages of feelings. Slowly, it became my way of talking to myself, of listening to the voice I had ignored for so long. But the turning point didn't stop there. One day, while drinking coffee at my favorite cafe, I overheard two women at the next table talking about a weekend workshop on finding purpose and passion. I felt a mix of curiosity and fear. My first thought was, that's not for me. But then something inside whispered, why not? That week, I signed up for the workshop, even though I almost canceled it twice. When I finally went, I sat in a circle with strangers who, like me, were searching for meaning. We shared stories of feeling lost, of hiding our true selves, of wanting more. It was the first time I admitted out loud, I don't know what my purpose is, but I'm tired of living without one. During that workshop, one exercise changed me deeply. We were asked to write down moments in life when we felt truly alive, moments when time seemed to disappear, and we felt connected to something bigger than ourselves. I thought about my childhood evenings spent writing by the window, about the joy of telling stories, about helping a friend through a hard time and seeing her smile again. I realized that my emptiness had grown because I had stopped doing the things that made me feel alive. I had stopped writing, stopped connecting deeply with people, stopped being curious. I had been living by rules and fears instead of by my own heart. After the workshop, I made a promise to myself to follow these small sparks, even if they didn't make sense at first, to write, to explore, to have conversations that mattered, to let myself feel deeply again. Another turning point came in the form of a question someone at the workshop asked me. If you could help just one person by being yourself, would that be enough reason to keep going? That question stayed with me. I realized that maybe purpose didn't have to be something grand, like changing the whole world. Maybe it could be something smaller, but still powerful. Sharing my words, my story, so that even one person might feel less alone. In the weeks that followed, I joined an online group for people rediscovering creativity. I shared my writing anonymously at first. The feedback I got was simple but kind. Your story touched me. I feel the same way. Thank you for writing this. Each message felt like someone lighting a candle in my darkness. These moments, the book I found by chance, the conversation with Claire, the workshop, the courage to write again, were my turning points. They didn't erase my struggles overnight, but they shifted something deep inside me. They reminded me that even in the darkest times, there are signs if we're willing to see them. And sometimes those signs come quietly, through a word, a question, or a single act of courage. Looking back now, I understand that life doesn't always give us one big moment of change. More often, it offers us many small moments, and it's up to us to listen, to act, and to trust that these moments will lead us somewhere better. Those turning points taught me that I wasn't as lost as I thought. Deep down, my heart still knew what mattered to me. I had just stopped listening. And as I began to listen again, to write again, and to share my truth, I found a new path slowly opening before me. A path that felt more like home than anything I had known before. After those small turning points, finding that book, writing again, joining the workshop, my life slowly began to change in ways I never imagined. It didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't always easy, but each day felt a little different. For the first time in years, I was not just surviving each day, I was starting to live it. And that feeling grew stronger as I discovered what it truly meant to live with purpose. Living with purpose wasn't about waking up every morning with a grand mission to change the world. It was about waking up and knowing why I was getting out of bed, even if the reason was simple. Some days, my purpose was to write something honest, even if nobody else would read it. Other days, it was to listen deeply to a friend who needed someone to understand. And sometimes, it was just to take better care of myself, because I finally saw my own life as something worth protecting and nurturing. At first, it felt fragile, like a small plant growing from a seed I had planted in my heart. But as I kept watering it with my actions, my thoughts, and my choices, it became stronger. I noticed that my days had more color. The mornings didn't feel as heavy. Even my daily routine, making coffee, sitting by the window, writing in my notebook, started to feel meaningful. Writing became my anchor. It was no longer about being good enough or publishing something important. It became my way of talking to my soul. Through words, I could ask myself questions, feel my emotions, and remind myself of what really mattered to me. I wrote about my struggles, my small victories, my fears, and my dreams. And in doing so, I discovered parts of myself I had forgotten. One day, I shared a piece of my writing online, this time not anonymously. It was a short story about feeling lost in a world that moves too fast. I was terrified to share it, but the response surprised me. People messaged me saying they felt the same way, that my words made them feel seen. For the first time, I realized that my pain and my journey could help others, even if just a little. That thought lit a fire inside me. Living with purpose also meant changing the way I looked at my daily life. Before, I used to see my job as something I had to do. But as I grew, I began to see it as a place where I could bring kindness, patience, and understanding. Instead of rushing through the day, I tried to slow down and truly see the people around me, to ask how they were doing and really listen to their answers. Small acts like these gave my days a deeper meaning. I also started to say yes to things that scared me but felt right in my heart. I joined a local writing group and read one of my stories aloud, even though my hands were shaking. I signed up to volunteer at a community center on weekends, helping young people express themselves through writing and art. These moments filled me with a sense of belonging and contribution that I had missed for so long. Purpose wasn't just about what I did, it was about how I chose to do it. I learned that even simple things could feel meaningful if I did them with presence and intention. Cooking dinner wasn't just about feeding myself. It became an act of caring. Talking to a stranger at the cafe wasn't just small talk. It became a chance to share kindness. One evening, as I walked home under a sky painted with soft pink clouds, I realized how far I had come. Months before, I would have barely noticed the beauty around me, my mind too clouded by emptiness. Now I could see it, feel it, and let it remind me how precious life truly is. Of course, there were still hard days. There were mornings when doubt returned, whispering that I wasn't good enough, that my writing didn't matter, that I was still lost. But now I had something stronger inside me, a quiet belief that my life did matter, and that my purpose wasn't something I had to find outside of myself. It was something I could create, day by day, choice by choice. My friendships also changed. I found myself drawn to people who shared their hearts honestly, who dared to ask deep questions and dream big dreams. Some old friendships faded, and that was painful, but it made space for new connections that felt more real and supportive. One of the most beautiful changes was the relationship I built with myself. Before, I was my harshest critic. I punished myself for every mistake and judged myself for not having it all figured out. But living with purpose taught me to treat myself with compassion, to see my struggles not as failures, but as part of my human journey. I began to trust my intuition more, that small voice that whispers what feels true, even when the world tells you to ignore it. That voice guided me toward choices that aligned with my heart, spending more time writing, helping others through words, and living simply but sincerely. Living with purpose didn't mean every moment was perfect or joyful, but even on hard days, there was an underlying sense of direction, like a compass inside me gently pointing toward what felt meaningful. And that made all the difference. One night, months after I had started this journey, I looked at myself in the mirror and said softly, "I'm proud of you." It felt strange at first, but then it felt true. I was proud, not because I had everything figured out, but because I had chosen to keep going, to keep searching, and to live each day with a little more love and courage. And so, my purpose became clear in its own quiet way: to create, to connect, to share my story, and to help others feel less alone. My purpose wasn't something I found written in the sky. It was something I built from my own experiences, my pain, my curiosity, and my hope. Now, when I wake up each morning, I don't feel the same heaviness that once kept me in bed. Instead, I feel a gentle excitement, the knowledge that today, in some small way, I can live true to who I am. That might mean writing something honest, having a meaningful conversation, or simply noticing the beauty around me. Living with purpose taught me that life isn't about being perfect or always knowing the answers. It's about being brave enough to ask the questions, to listen to your heart, and to choose again and again to live a life that feels real to you. And if I could share one thing with anyone who feels as lost as I once did, it would be this: purpose isn't a single destination. It's the way you walk your path with honesty, kindness, and the courage to follow what makes your heart feel alive. That's what truly changed my life, and it can change yours too.